That is such a fancy intro. I was
I
just this is the first time
know.
I saw it. I'm just like looking at the intro and like, oh, I have to speak in like 2 seconds. But here we go. We're live.
Yes,
It's
we are.
always
The
just
music is great. It reminds me of I play this game called Astroneer, and it's like a space game where you're an astronaut,
yeah.
but the music is very ethereal, like almost interstellar like, and it sounds like
Right.
that. I was like, do 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 do.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, look, my head was going like this when I looked at the intro.
It's great.
Anyways, we're here with a bunch of people and we're already marveling at ourselves. Let's maybe tune that down just a little.
Yes.
Anyways, we have Brian here saying he likes the intro. Me too. And
Yes.
for the
It's
people who
great.
have watched before, look, the overlays are a little bit rounder now because our brand folks said it's too square. Anyways, here we go. So we are back with another live stream, and I have a fantastic guest who is not really a guest because we are colleagues. We work together. We talk all the time, and so
Yes.
Lo is supposed to be on here anyway. So Lo, why don't you take it away, and say who you are, what you do, all the things.
Awesome. So, hi everyone. My name is Lo, and I am DevRel at Hygraph. I like to talk a lot about the sort of editor and developer relationship and how they can work together to build sort of, the ideal not only content model, but a CMS that works for everyone. I specialize in front end frameworks. I was previously a front end engineer at a large public university where I managed their web presence. And before that, I was a social worker doing lots of community work in our physical world.
What a lovely crossover and bridge to being Devrel, right? These things work.
Yes.
Like, I used to be a nurse working in psychiatry, and it's like all this kind of soft skill stuff that comes together and binds you,
Yeah, it really
right?
comes in handy. Like
Yeah,
my social work training and just being able to talk to people and relay information really comes in handy with DevRel things.
exactly. So now let's see if when we say this, that people start understanding multi-tenancy in Headless CMS, because that is
Yes.
pretty technical, I can tell you. But the simple idea is, well, Lo, what you made slides, right? I want
Yes,
you to
I did.
let you go for it, like without me taking it.
Okay, let's get into it a little bit and I'll try to break it down so it makes it, digestible. So when
Exactly.
we talk about multi-tenancy, before I get into the definition here, I just want to give a little bit of background. Multi-tenancy has sort of been around historically for a very long time. It goes back to the days of when we had mainframe computers that took up a whole room, and inside of those large sort of mainframe pieces of hardware, you had all kinds of apps and users and all sorts of things going on
Yeah.
behind in that architecture. So that's sort of where it stems from, right? And then that quickly sort of evolved into things that we would readily recognize now, which is sort of hardware virtualization. So that's talking about like virtual machines, right? So inside of a physical piece of hardware, you can have virtual machines, and those virtual machines can host a wide range of applications. But all of those applications are sort of sharing this infrastructure of that piece of hardware or that server, right? So, just to give you a little bit of background there. But for our purposes today, we're talking about multi tenancy as sort of a single piece or instance of a piece of software application that serves multiple tenants, right? And those tenants could be customers, entities, or brands. So, the piece of software we're talking about today is a CMS. So, if we think about a CMS, we're talking about we have one CMS and it serves a wide range of needs. That could be multiple brands, that could be customers, it could be all sorts of things. So let's see. And so, if we get into sort of the difference between a single tenant and a multi tenant, Single tenant is basically when you have all separate instances, right? So let's say from a CMS perspective, every time that you had a new brand or a new entity, you would spin up a new CMS. It would have its own individual sort of infrastructure. But in a multi-tenant configuration, you might have one database, right, that serves as sort of a hub for all of the different front ends that you're going to spit out, and they share resources together. And maybe a bunch of different teams can all utilize that space to create what they need to create. Essentially, would you agree with that, Tim?
Yeah, I'm just listening intently, but yes. And so we've seen this in, like, when I worked at agency, we saw this stuff all the time, because especially when it wasn't yet a headless CMS, but we had architecture, like really proper servers we had to work with. It was always a discussion. Are we just going to add configuration and just add two things in one instance? Or are we going to replicate all this stuff on another machine and then back that up and work with it? And so it's always a discussion of how you move these things around. And especially when you have separated brands, but with similar data structures and stuff like that, it becomes a super interesting thing to do.
Yes,
And so that's basically what we're going to look at today.
exactly. So, in other words, from what Tim and I are talking about, you can really sort of think about in as a metaphor, multi-tenancy is kind of like an apartment complex. So, in an apartment complex, you have multiple apartments, right? And people who live in those apartments, they do varying different things in their apartments. They're styled totally different. They lay out their space differently, but the common sort of thing about all of these apartments is that they share the infrastructure of the building, for instance. So all of the central piping for like water, the electrical grid, that is all shared amongst the apartments a lot of times. And there's a lot of there might even be in modern complexes common space, right? So we have apartments, and then we have a common space, and everybody sort of utilizes these common spaces. Maybe there's a common space for co-working, or a common space like a computer lab or something, all kinds of things, right? So that's sort of the general idea behind multi-tenancy. We have various entities coming together to share resources. And so, along with that, sort of thinking about, well, why would a company or someone want to utilize multi-tenancy? And there are a wide range of benefits that you can get from using multi-tenancy. One in particular is that it allows you to not have multiple CMSs. You can use one CMS. Because I think a lot of times, at least from what I've seen as being just, a developer in my past and not a DevRel, is that sometimes you will see a company and maybe they have multiple brands or multiple entities that are responsible, and each one of them sort of has a separate CMS, and they're completely sort of siloed away from the next. And it makes it hard to sort of have visibility when everything is separate, because there is probably some shared resources that everybody could benefit from.
I
And
think it's
when,
almost always, isn't it? Because
yes,
imagine, the more mature you get as a brand, the more, or brands, you're going to align how you do that. Right. So you have a bit of centralized stuff, and then you give people guardrails, and then they just go off with their brand and
go.
do whatever they need. But quality is only assured when you share certain things. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with that, sort of what, to Tim's point, is sort of this scalability idea, right? If you create an environment where you are sharing resources, and the only thing that changes is that you're adding additional tenants, if you will, that allows you to scale. And even though this scale, like, it might require more work on the front end, what you end up with is a workflow and a system where no matter how many entities you acquire or how many brands you acquire, there is a process and a framework and a model to use that they can then take and go off and create what they need to create. And this works to sort of decrease your overall cost, right? So decreasing your everybody wants to decrease overhead costs and hosting costs. If you have one CMS, that can greatly decrease your cost in terms of the, your hosting cost, what you're putting out there, and also your overall maintenance cost in terms of having to manage more than one CMS or more than one hosting space.
Yeah,
And then
that's really interesting, right? When you look at like more scale, because I personally worked on like a multi-tenant thing for a company called L'Oreal. They like the L'Oreal group. I think they must have 50 brands, and we worked
at
on like
least, yeah.
we did the I think the cosmetics part and the luxury part. So we had like 15 brands, but these 15 brands before we came in, they had like 3,100 different websites, all in different coding languages, all with different creative agencies, with different front ends. It was basically a pit of money, right? A black
Yes.
hole. And so
Yes.
we had two ways of multi-tenancy in here. So the first one was in the mind. The multi-tenancy would be, we will make one technical stack that they all work in. They all get the components that we deliver are so good that they can reuse them and customize them. They're all in the same CMS with the same front-end stack, with the same KPIs for performance, accessibility, all that stuff. But then it got so big. We went down from like 3,500 websites or a bit less to like 800. But you cannot do 800 websites in one CMS.
Yes.
Especially back in that time when it wasn't in the cloud yet. And so the second multi-tenancy thing was, okay, we have a Europe CMS, and then we have a US CMS, and you have an Asia CMS. And
yes,
in there you had a few hubs, and then we would just say, okay, these 4 brands with these language variants go in there, and the other ones go in there. And so at scale, it all gets harder, and it felt expensive for them. But now looking back, many years back, they spend a lot, but they gain so much in quality, website performance, SEO benefits, all that stuff, that they must have made a crap ton of money actually having done that investment of the multi-tenancy idea. And that makes it so exciting, right?
Yeah. And like in a situation like that, where you're talking about, you're not just talking about a company, you're talking about a huge conglomerate,
Exactly.
Of brands. It makes sense that you would then, once you get to that sort of scaled point, that you would start thinking about, okay, how's the best way to sort of divide this again in a way that makes sense with what we already have, and by region makes totally sense. Makes total sense.
Yeah, but we had these problems from like scale always give you problems, because
yes,
we were the agency building the thing. Like I was in charge of all those points that you saw here for front-end related things, and then talking to people, making them understand, and then building it. But then maintenance we didn't do. So we would build an MVP and then do some updates along the way later on sometimes. But then the team would go to another brand and build that project. And then we gave the maintenance contract to another company. And they, of course, had to also understand the multi-tenancy and the reusability and all the things and just deal with it. But when you're talking 800 websites, like I had a team of 120 developers. It's ridiculous. So there is always, scale gives you things that are hard.
It does. But it gives you other problems to solve too, right? But this is where, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, but this is where things like making sure that you have a good sort of transition plan, a good maintenance plan, and good overall objectives that are documented, right? Because multi-tenancy is the type of thing that works really well when you anticipate all of these issues ahead of time, and you can and plan for them.
Exactly. And we're going to show some of this stuff soon, by the way. Just to let you know, it's not just slides today. We actually made like a full brand to show you in a second.
Yeah. And it's really cool. I'm super excited to get into it.
Well, we just have a lot of fun together anyways. So
and then so I won't go through all of these yet. I'll just cover sort of my last final point about the benefits. When you have sort of a centralized location, you can create sort of a content hub, right? And that helps you improve collaboration not only between your editors, but also it increases sort of developer productivity, because what you're looking at is if you have sort of shared resources in terms of these are base content models that we're all going to use, and we're just going to focus on transforming sort of the content, right? You can create these nice sort of repeatable patterns that work for each, work, and you can plan those and create them in a way that works for every brand that comes or every entity that comes later.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think now we're going to get into just a quick practical example, and then we will move on to showing what some of this actually looks like, right? So here we have 6 movies, right? We have Marcel the Snail, fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. Lighthouse, Past Lives, Midsummer, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and Uncut Gems. So what these movies all have in common here is that they are all made by the production company A24. A24 makes a lot of movies. They tend to focus on sort of independent art house films. But where the multi-tenancy comes from in this example is every time that A24 pumps out a new movie, it is basically a new brand. They need to provide a marketing campaign. They need to provide information about the film, information about the actor, the director. There's also merch associated with each of these movies that are available to the public to purchase. So in a sense like that, where you have a clear model of services that you are going to do for every movie that you produce and put out, you would want to have a shared sort of vision and content model for every movie to come. So this is an example of multi-tenancy in the movie world, but there are lots of different sort of multi-tenancy examples out there. Tim just shared one about L'Oreal. You can think of like a music record label. Every time they put out and sign a new band, that is essentially a new brand, and they have to, do all the things that they've done with the previous bands for that. So having a centralized content hub for that in that regard makes this overall process easier instead of spinning up an entirely new thing every single time they create a new movie or have a new band.
Exactly.
So I think we'll stop for there, and maybe let's get into an actual use case that we're going to demo.
Yeah. So we have this starter that I made a while back, not that long ago actually, which is called skincare. So I'm just gonna put it on here. And so, like I just said, I worked with L'Oreal a lot and all these kind of cosmetics brands, and I felt like there's so many companies working with this cosmetics, and they have this luxury vibe to it. So I thought, why not make a starter kit that looks like that? So this is our skincare starter, and you can find it here. It's on for sale. There's lots of documentation on this thing on our website and also in our community. So you can actually join us here in the community and talk about all this stuff when you try it, when you clone it, all that stuff. So CTA is out of the way. Essentially, this is a relatively simple commerce website that gets its product information from an external API. Because of course we thought, hey, what if this scales and we have multiple brands? Where does the data come from for these products? Well, in this case, it comes from Federate This, which I won't go in too deep right now, but we have built Federate This as basically a static repository API that you can use as a developer to just try out things in Hygraph. So we have a bunch of different things, and the skincare products are actually in here. And you can see it's a GraphQL query to get all that. So that's how this product stuff comes in here. And so this brand is kind of sleek looking. It's modern. It's open. It's like very specifically targeted to the luxury market. It's very expensive. And so the story goes that we just came up with for this demo is the fact that they actually it's a small brand, like they have 4 products, right? Three products in a bundle, and they're doing so well that they figured, what if we use the same factory to make the same products with a slightly different packaging, but it's the same cost essentially, and just look at a completely different market where we are sure this is going to sell. And so we came up with this another fictitious brand that goes into like a sub niche of a certain genre of people that would probably love this brand. And so, Lo, shall I show that brand, or should we talk about all the multi-tenant stuff first? I'm guessing we show it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Let's
like
show it.
Nikki is saying, this is basically the economy of scale.
Exactly,
Totally true,
Nikki.
right? You're just gonna rebrand the thing that you already have, spend the same money, but give it to different people. So we go from skincare to goth skin,
Goth skin. Yes.
right? Because this brand discovers and give fabulous goths what they need. Goths. I have to say it with my Dutch accent, right? Because everybody has skin, and everybody
Yes.
needs skincare. Everybody needs
Exactly.
SPF. And especially people that deal with lots of makeup and all that, this is goth skin. And so we came up with this brand, and because we used Hygraph, I spent 1 hour with my colleague Nikki, who was in the chat, to figure out how to do this. And then after that, I built this website this morning with the same building blocks. So we built like literally another website, another brand inside Hygraph in the space of probably 2-3 hours in total. Of course, I had all the building blocks. Like you can see, this hero has different colors, different fonts, and things like that, but it's relatively similar.
But it's the same.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly, because we are reusing just with a different front end. Like this is a routine component here. Well, we have a routine component here as well. And this is a product highlighter. Well, that's this one. And so I just like Photoshop AI, a whole bunch of things to make these lovely images. And of course, that actually the design of the creative work took the most effort, because these things exist, and you can see that the face cream has like a little filter and CSS on it, so it looks like a different product, but in fact, it's the same. And so actually, I'm using another component that we already have in skincare on this page as well to like explore the range. That's not on this one, because we could do it. It's probably on another page, right? So because these kind of projects, they are component driven. So component-based designs means you have a whole bunch of different puzzle pieces that together make a puzzle, and you can switch them up, right? So, Lo, what's your opinion on how that works? What do you have there?
And I think, like, this is sort of this stark contrast that you see between sort of the more luxury presentation of skincare versus goth skin really shows like sort of the beauty of multi-tenancy, right? You can make some really radical transformations while having a centralized service of components that everyone is using, every brand is using, and really
it's also
go
like
after multiple targeted audience. Right? Yeah, which is like fantastic.
Because these components, they were already good. So I just made a new brand. And like, I know, Nikki, you said, hey, it's only like 1 or 2 hours. Yes, it's that short. Of course, I'm a relatively fast developer, and I didn't have to go through the whole process of asking a design creative agency to build me this. Of course, I did it myself. I just did a quick thing. But it's just to show you, right? And so now that we have these 2 brands, this is not just the front end that counts. You know what actually counts a lot more almost is the people working behind the scenes to make this happen. Content editors need to feel like they can actually deal with this thing in an easy way without being distracted by complications, right? And so we have set up Hygraph in a way that we can have multiple users and multiple brands in one project. And using permission system, now certain users that are in a certain group cannot see, let's say, skincare, but only goth skin, or the other way around. And so you can make new stuff with the same content models, with the same data structures, with the same asset selection, everything. But due to your permissions, you can just not see the ones from the other brand, but you can use the same structure. Does that make sense if I say it like that, Lo?
Yeah. And then And the great thing about that is like sort of you can create and tailor, like you said, that editorial experience where the editors, for instance, for Gothskin only need to focus about, you know, the brand that they are taking care of, which is Gothskin. So they
Exactly.
don't,
Yeah.
their view and their experience is not muddled by content from any other brand. They are isolated in that sense.
Yeah, and that governance bit is actually very important. And so we've come up with, and I'll just go into Hygraph now to actually show you some stuff. Oh, refresh to update. I'm live. I'm just going to click this. Let's do it.
Yeah, why not?
Very good. We live on the edge.
Excellent.
Anyways, as with that as an aside, so we want to just show you how we did this in Hygraph. And so there are, of course, always many ways to do this. And we came up with one that might, when you dive in, there are certain complicated bits, but multi-tenancy always has that. So we're not saying, hey, it's
Yes.
harder in Hygraph than in Sitecore or whatever. It's always hard. However, we came up with one that was done with just configuration, which can scale. Because you can actually add another brand or a bunch of other editors and just assign them, and it starts working. We can make 10 brands in 10 minutes if we want to.
Right. And that's the key,
know?
right?
Yeah.
Like you can configure multi-tenancy in a wide variety of ways, but doing it in a
Exactly.
way that allows you to easily add more as you need is where you want to head.
Yeah, and so I wanted to just put this on the screen so to give you a little bit of the visual before we dive into interfaces, right? So we have multiple brands, and these brands, they have pages attached, right? And so I'm just looking at Nikki's comment. What is he saying? And set and forget it approach to multi-tenancy. Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
We'll show you in a sec why this is set and forget, because it scales like really well. So the idea is we have multiple brands, and a brand is a data model essentially, and it can have a bunch of things attached to it. So pages, of course, because each website has different pages, and there can be sub pages like home, about, and a PDP means product detail page. And later on, when this demo expands, it can have search pages, list pages, but also like certain data models that are super specific to a brand, like the product highlight, all go into the page, right, or below the page. And then the brand also has a connection to the brand editor connection data model, which has a bunch of editors connected to it, which means for one brand, I have a bunch of pages, and there's a model that says these editors belong to this brand. And so with that in mind, we add a bunch of permissions in the Hygraph system. So these editors are in a certain role, and they can only see the brand that they are attached to.
Right.
And this is how it was set up. And so now I'm actually logged in as the admin. So I can see everything, because I wanted to first show you all the things, and then we go through maybe adding some content or changing it up.
Yeah. So you want to take a look at
Where should we start?
Schema a little bit, and we can talk a little bit about that.
So shall we start with just the brand schema here?
Yes.
So let me just, okay, so a brand has a name. That should be relatively obvious. And so we've made it in a way that you have a bunch of different pages, and a page is actually a schema for us. So a page has a slug, a title, a description, OG image, and a bunch of components.
Components,
And we'll show you what components are in a bit. And so we have a brand two-way reference. So this page belongs to a brand, and in the brand, you can see which pages belong to it. So we can have multiple pages per brand. And then there's also a record for a brand editor connection. So to figure out this brand is connected to this connection model that has a bunch of editors connected to it. So that's like this, you could almost see it's like a connection table in SQL. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that in Headless CMS territory,
but that is essentially
the data model idea. And then PDPs are product detail pages, and we also have something called product foci. And so we have a schema that's called a product focus that is connected to the federate this external API that gives you a product. We won't go in too deep now because we will lose ourselves in data models and whatever. We're just going to show you in a sec. And so when we actually have a look at this brand editor connection here, we see there's the name of the connection, the brand that's connected to it, and all the editors. So there's
Right.
one brand to multiple editors. And that's about it. So did you want to add something here?
Well, just that, like, so I think even though traditionally, like, yeah, we were just talking about SQL, what we see here is this editor sort of reference that's happening with the users table, right? So these are users that you assign to the project. So that is very similar.
It is, yes. One thing is important though, like these users that we have, we can actually go to our settings and then look at our team members. You see, so we have Tim Lowe, we have Nikki who helped us, and also me. And so we have different, like we have brand editors and admins. And so the interesting bit here is that Hygraph as a system, we don't really expose the user objects to interfaces like this. Wait, and so we've had to do like one trick with basically our API playground to do a certain query to connect the users to this model. So when you are doing this yourself,
right?
Sorry?
It's a mutation, right?
Exactly. So we add this connection as a mutation through the playground, through the API. And if you are doing this yourself or you have some ideas, just come in Slack and just come here and ask us how we did that. It's a little too deep for this stream to like do all the queries and find the IDs and all the things. That's a little intense. Oh, and here's Brian. And the track's totally possible because the amazing mutations. Exactly. Like it's crazy what this playground can do. You can look at like different environments, different stages. There's a lot of stuff you can actually do with this playground that's not this stream, but we will definitely do one later.
Yeah, I know. I use it all the time. Like no matter what kind of Hygraph project I'm building, it's just such a great space.
Yeah, and so let's have a look at so we have two brands, right? So we have the skincare brand and the goth skin. And so we have, and then certain things are just connected to it. And in this case, we only have, we have the goth skin editors connected, and there's no product pages for now. I just didn't build that yet. But we have one homepage, which is this one. Again, I didn't spend too long. That's why we just have the homepage. But we can actually add stuff quite quickly. So let me just now that we can also look at the skincare one that's a little bit more mature. You see it has a bunch of product pages attached. It has the skincare editors group and a homepage, but it could also have an about page and whatever. And so now when we look at that brand editor view, so we can see that there's an editor for skincare and an editor for goth skin. And in goth skin, that's me.
Yes, Tim.
But this is not the account I'm logged in with. I'm an admin, so I can show you everything. But there's here, for example, for skincare, it's Nikki. And so maybe it's a good moment now for me to log out and log in with that account that is a goth skin editor and then show you what I can see. Because we are not seeing all these brand views and all these multiple pages here. You don't see them if you're an editor that's just allowed to go to one place. But oh wait, before I go there, I can quickly, but not go too deep, show you how it works with these permissions.
Let's look at the permissions.
Yeah, okay, beware. Here we go. Right? This is the absolute power of Hygraph. We have so many permission settings, it's almost mind-boggling. So let's just get a simple one. Let's go to a page. And let's read a page. So on all stages, which means we are in draft or published, in all locales, so you can do this even per locale. You can do the French draft version, you can do this. It goes that deep. And so it looks at the entity of that, page schema, and it checks, okay, so there's a brand connected to this. And in the brand editor condition or the brand editor connection table, does my ID that I'm currently at exist in the editor's list of that brand connection, of the brand, of that page? If that ID is there, then I can read it.
Right.
And is that maybe the depth we should go to now? Because if we go deeper, this goes maybe.
Yeah, I think we should do that. And then now we can show
you building stuff.
Yeah. Why don't you show from an editor an editor's view.
Exactly. One last thing is, so we also decided, I did that with Nikki the other day, is to add the created by, which is me. Because I could create a page without attaching a brand, and then only I can see that. And the moment I attach a brand and hit save, the other brand editors can also see it. So I wanted to do that.
Yeah, because
Or-
that makes sense that you would have a space as a brand editor where you first create something and maybe it's not ready to be viewed by the rest of the team or
Exactly.
wherever else.
Yeah, you need to have like this little autonomy, right? Before it goes somewhere. It's always
Yes.
really nice as an editor. All right, let me just log out and log back in with this. I'm just using my GitHub account here, which has different levels of, well, I'm now a content editor or brand editor in this project. So now when we go back to that project, let's see, are we here? Yes, we are. So in my content, I'm in the Godskin group, right? So
Right.
I can see the brand editor view of Godskin because I'm in there, but the other one, the skincare, is gone now because that's not in those permissions. And I have a brand view of just my brand and page view of just my homepage that I created here. And on it goes. And so let's edit this page. And so maybe this might be a nice time, Lo, maybe you want to take that to talk about what components are in Hygraph.
So, and then real quickly before I get into components, in this view, you also notice that the brand editor doesn't see the schema because they don't need to, and it's taking up space, and you want the editor to just be able to focus on creating their content or adding assets, which I consider to be part of their content, but you add it in a separate model. So that's why that is also there.
For the permission set, we didn't touch the assets for now. So as a Godskin person, I can actually see a skincare asset here. If we wanted to, we can relatively easily just copy paste the things which we just saw and put it in on all for the assets, and I can only see the images that are for that brand.
Right, which makes sense. And then also might be that doesn't make sense for some reasons. Maybe there are commonly shared assets that everybody uses for whatever reason, for maybe the overarching, company or conglomerate brand or what have you.
Exactly.
But yeah, so components. So for this project, you'll see there are a few different components. There's the hero, there's a product highlight, and the hero is sort of, can you expand that drop down? Maybe you want to zoom in just a little bit.
Oh yeah, I can do this and then zoom.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
So components are great because you can sort of create these nice sort of content repeatable patterns, right?
Exactly.
And a hero is, what you typically see is sort of these fields here, title, description, and an image. And how that ends up getting displayed is you get a title, you get a brief description, and then you have a big image. And it's sort of this very nice content piece, right? But the great thing about components and how we have this project structured is components are available to everyone. So regardless of the brand, the component hero was available to Gothskin. It's also available to skincare. But through entering in content in these components, they can transform and create a hero that is specific to the brand that they manage and that they write for. Right.
Yeah, and what is so lovely about the components also is that it's not really a data connection to another schema that's living somewhere on its own. Is a hero, this just works for the homepage. So why would you have this as a singleton item live somewhere and connect to it multiple times? This just connects to this schema here for this page.
Exactly.
And so that's why I can just do this, hit save, and now go to my web page, refresh it, and now it moved down, right? And if you had this with a separated connection, that's a lot more clicks.
Yes.
So this is
and
really
it allows you to like experiment, right? Because like a lot of times these are the these are more sort of volatile pieces of content in terms of they
Exactly.
change a lot. You want to experiment what you have in your hero
Well, let me
or
just
what
add
you're
another one and
featuring
show
at the
you,
time.
right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I can just, well, yeah, so let's put it at the second spot. And now we just call it, this is a live stream hero. Oh, I have to type correctly. Let's just grab an image. And so right now we didn't really do something specific to that. Oh, wait, I have to go here and find. I had this lovely image that I have to find, but it's hard. I
Ooh.
cannot see them. How do you do that? Oh, this one is. I had a L'Oreal one that I worked with back in the day that I found. Yes, we shot this in like 2016 and it's just on the website. So for now, let's take this one. Well, let's see if this actually works, because it might be overlapping some content on the image because we haven't really set it up properly. But let's refresh. No. Oh, I know this. I know. This has to
Oh,
be
you didn't
published.
publish the asset. You have to publish the asset.
Well,
Yeah.
I could set it up by just querying the other. I could query draft, but that's not for this stream.
Yeah.
So
let's not get
clearly
into
this
that.
image is not really built for this system, but we could change that easily. But you see how easy that is. And I'm actually allowed to just right now select any asset and any copy that I want. And it didn't influence the skincare thing one bit because it's completely separated, right?
It's a totally separate thing.
Yeah. So
And
as a
there's
content editor, I can
also
do whatever I want here.
like we haven't done this here because it is a demo, obviously. But in sort of a real world setting, probably what you would want to do is set up preview, right? So if you were changing things like this, you
It's
would
actually there.
It is?
Yeah, I built that into skincare or now goth care because it's the same code base. So it says preview is true. You see the little
Yeah, I see
how do you
it.
call that? Like the little lightning here. So when I unpublish this last one, I know I can do that. Unpublish this document. Oh, I cannot unpublish it. That's interesting. Oh, this might be due to the settings that we set up in the
yes,
permissions.
right. That's exactly what it
Yeah.
is. I forgot that you were on the brand editor role.
Exactly. Maybe as a brand editor, I'm not allowed to do that. But let's see. Anyways, this is always fun, like figuring those things out because permissions are very granular. So they're like a power user tool you can do anything with. You kind of have to understand them. Luckily, our docs are super solid. So you can find a lot of information about it there. Maybe that was just not meant to be. I could do it, but who cares, right? You get the gist. You get the gist. Let's clean this up and remove this hero now because it was not really the nicest thing. So can I publish now again?
You should be able to.
Oh, there we go. So maybe there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about here in terms of what these users can do specific to a brand. Because when you look at skincare, we have this component, and this is called a product highlight. So this is actually when I click shop this product, I'm actually going to the product page and shop it. But the information that this is this product comes from the Federate This API.
Right.
But the image, title, text, and all of that is super editorial, specific for a content editor for that brand. So what you can do is I've actually made this one slightly different than the others. There's actually a schema specific for product views or for like, this is the highlight one for a product. And you can see it has like title, description, image, URL to actually this product page, CTA, and a product ID. And this product ID is used to fetch the information through Content Federation from the skincare products endpoint. We'll not go into what that is now, but there's lots of documentation about what Content Federation is and how you can use that. So this thing just connects to the external system, gets the product information, shows it on the page. And so this one is now branded to Goth Skin because I can make other highlights that then are super content edited because I have all this power here.
Right.
But I can also make one for skincare that's different that then these content editors cannot see. And so this is a slightly different use case again, because this is an actual, a schema on its own. It's next to the pages, for example, right? So when I go back to my admin account, you can see that there's multiple.
I feel like we should do like some do when you
Yeah.
like switch back and forth.
I'm just not showing my email now, if you don't mind. I think I might have done, but anyways. So now when I'm in the product related list, you can see there's actually a bunch of them. Oh no, product focus, I apologize. You see, so there's multiple. So there's one for the goth skin, but also one for skincare. And so these can kind of live on their own and be linked to from other places, because this thing is a standalone thing that lives on its own and can be put in different stuff, essentially.
Exactly. All while
That makes sense?
having that sort of shared resource of
Exactly.
the
This is a
product
shared
coming in
resource. Yeah.
from the Federate this API, right? And
Yeah.
that's the cool thing about this, I think, is that you can make content transformations while also maintaining a shared infrastructure. And in this case, it's the products, right? So all the products are the same. It's just the narrative and the story that you've built around the products and who you're trying to target that you are changing.
And so you select that same product, but you write your own copy and put your own image against it for this specific one, right? And there's also these product items like this, and those are always going to kind of be the same, because it's a product list of which ones are fit together well, right? So that's another type. That's a related product list. That is literally just, this is the simplest thing. It just gets data. It gets the related product for product ID 1. And product ID 1, in this case, that's number 1. Its ingredients, of course, are snail slime, and is this face serum one. So when we go to my related products for product number 1, I'm getting back face cream and skincare bundle. Well, that's those two, right? Oh, those two. And so these things can be relatively standalone, because they're always going to be what relates to another, because it's product data that comes from another API. So this could be your commerce engine. This could be commerce layer. This could be commerce tools. It could be Shopify. It could be BigCommerce. This is a marketing website with a bit of e-commerce attached to it that's really composable. So you can just get this data from another place. And all editors for both brands can actually find these.
Exactly. And then if you update your products, let's say you get more products, if you update it in the original location, it will also update here. And that's the great thing about this.
Yeah. So we can give it to, like, if we oops, that's not the right one. Here we go. If we update it here, all these websites get all the products instantly. And so, yeah, that's what Headless and Composable can do for you, right? And so we're like 48 minutes in talking about this complicated stuff. What do you still want to talk about, Lo? Do we have something that we still should show? Maybe adding a new brand?
Yeah, we could try adding a new brand. I don't know if we'd be able to show like the front end necessarily now, because
if you want, I could share my screen and show you some code. Oh, wait. I think without having to show any code, I can go to the playground and show you how we query.
Oh, yeah, let's do some queries
specific to a brand. Because there's one thing with this setup that I figured out and I was trying to do and I couldn't get it done. It's like, how can I get the homepage from skincare or goth skin? How do I do that? And so I thought, well, I'm going to grab the slug and the brand, combine them, and just make it work. Turns out, if you want to do a where clause in GraphQL for a singular item like a page, the where clause has to be unique. The field has to be unique. But brand is not a unique field, because you can have multiple pages with the same brand.
Exactly.
So I was scratching behind the ears of like, how would I do that? Turns out it's actually quite simple. Now, I just had it and now it's gone. How about that?
Yeah, think because you.
Did I click on
closed-
something? Oh wait,
Yeah, I think you closed the where.
I'm just gonna grab it from my code and copy paste it in here quickly.
Yeah.
I'll show you. Because so what we actually did, and the GraphQL heroes here in the code can maybe help me. Maybe there's a better way, but the way I found it, I'm just gonna open my code and find that query quickly. Queries page. Just copy paste that in here. So this is how I did it now. And please in the chat, if you know a better way, we are here to learn, just like you. We do now a query to all pages where the slug is the slug that I want for my URL, and the brand is in this case GothSkin. Or skincare or whatever. And so
whatever the brand is,
filters down all those because the slug is unique and the brand is not unique. So you just look at all pages with the brand GothSkin and then filter out that slug that I want. And then that works really well.
Yeah. And then we proceed on with like our regular, with our regular
and then it
content
just
queries,
works like a normal query, and it's just there you go.
Exactly.
The only difference is it's not data page that you get back, but you get a pages array with one page in it, essentially. And I could actually then do the skin care. Oh no, not like that.
K, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And let's make the other one also variable, so we can then do brand. Oops. We're going off the beaten path here. But brand is
skincare.
Oh, it's the brand name. So I think it's like this. So we have to just add. Yeah, exactly. So we have to just add this now here. Live coded, man. We will do it. And this is called brand.
We will build it.
And then, yeah, we're almost there. This needs to be brand also. And now we run it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I just got home skincare from the skincare brand with everything I need. It's a little bit zoomed in now, so you don't see as much. But there you go. And so we now kind of filtered down multiple pages to a unique slug with the brand that we just gave in here. And that's magic. And my friend Booba just joined. Dude, you're a little late, but we've done some magic here.
Hello.
So Booba is like full force. Like if you want a programmer that understands like full stack, this is your man. I will tell you this live. I don't say this often. This dude. So Booba, you're a little late, but we've done some things today. So
yes, we got into it.
You watch it back or send me a DM and we'll show you. Maybe just for your benefit, we built a brand that is a little gothy, and with some little. Maybe you should refresh and not have this bug, right? Oh, I turned it off. It will be back, I promise. There we go. Yeah, Ruba, I know you will have a few questions, but the multi-tenancy, it worked, and it's very interesting from a Headless CMS. So we still have a bunch of viewers. And so anyone in the comments, do you have like a specific question on this? Were we like super clear so you don't have a question? Or was this like meow on the top of your head and like what the heck did you just do? Because when my colleague Nikki just showed us this yesterday, I was like, oh, we're never gonna do this in the stream. And I'm just like, if I have to debug this thing, no. Now that I've spent like an hour or two in the evening with it, I'm good. I understand the thing. But
once you get familiar with how things are moving,
exactly. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask them now, and we will just be able to show you. If not, however, we can actually invite you to come to our Slack, because our community is huge and there's lots of bustling and hustling there where people ask questions. We have a lovely getting started channel where you can feel just safe and ask anything that you want. You can also sign up for Hygraph, and actually what you can do is go to, and maybe I'll show you this on the screen. if you go to, I'm just going to Google and see how Google works. Yes. That just worked, isn't it?
Magic.
So what you can do is actually go here and you can just clone this project. So you get skincare just out of the box. It just works. And you can go to GitHub and you can just run it yourself. And then you actually make an account in that flow. So we would love for you to try this stuff out. It's all free. Like the stuff you saw today, one or two tiny things were like, especially on like the permissions are needed on like a pro account. But 99% of the rest, it's all works in the free tier. So you can go fully crazy and try all this stuff yourself. And so maybe one last one I have to add that banner is the following. And it's important.
What are you going to add?
Yeah, watch it. Here we go. Because this is something we work on every day, all the time, all day. Changes, updates. We know our lovely colleague Romina is in the chat. She works her butt off to like make this the best it can be.
She's so fantastic.
Yeah, from like videos to like all the things. So even like, let me show you what good docs mean if you write them for Google, for example. Watch this. Look at this. There's all the lessons right there. Google knows them exactly. I didn't even spell Hygraph correctly. And so when you go in, if you actually want to learn all those things, all the stuff we've just shown, like we did a little bit more complex things, but to get there, all the lessons are here, right? So when you join our community, go to getting started, go through this, you're good to go.
Yep.
So I feel like I've done my CTAs for today.
Yes, you did it. You did an excellent job. I'm proud of you.
Sometimes DevRel need to market a little and just ask for the obvious, right? I feel like we actually have to do that. And so, Lo, any last words for today?
Just I think to wrap this sort of up about multi-tenancy is some sort of key things to think about if you're trying to get into multi-tenancy with a headless CMS. Some things to think about. And a couple of those are you want to make sure that you have sort of clear objectives in your mind about what you're trying to achieve. And what that looks like is thinking about overall, what are you trying to accomplish, right? And what is your use case for this? And also, before you even get to something like content modeling, try to model out what your actual CMS model looks like, right? So what are all the potential things that you would need to make this work amongst your different brands and the different teams within the brands, for instance? Exactly. Another thing you want to think about is make sure that you start sort of with your content model after you've established these objectives in your CMS model. Don't necessarily think about what the front ends need to be or what they are. Think about what the story you're trying to communicate and what kind of content you need for that. And that goes for both sort of developers and editors alike, because this is a group effort. And I think one of the great things about multi-tenancy and headless CMSs in general is that it does sort of encourage that collaborative relationship between developers and editors, building something together to get a product that works for everyone. And the last thing I'll say about that is have and think about a clear maintenance plan and data governance. So and that goes to what kind of permissions you're going to have, how you're going to handle people making requests for new things, new features, and also change management, right? Because if you are not currently in a multi-tenancy situation, you are going to have to manage a transition, and you might want to start small of what people are already doing. So these are kind of the things that you want to think about ahead of time, about what your editors are currently doing and how they're working and how the developers are currently working and how you can sort of slowly transition them into a multi-tenancy situation.
So I have two things. I say preach and continue, or the big word is teamwork / governance here.
Yes.
Think before you do, right?
Always.
I feel like you're on fire. Should I just remove myself from the screen so I can give you a monologue? Do you feel like you're on fire
No.
enough for this? No, you're good?
No, I'm just very passionate about
I know.
developers and editors coming together. It's like my favorite thing. I'm like, no, you can create magic together.
I've seen it. Like talking about this L'Oreal thing, right? We looked at this project. It's like, okay, there's like this $40 million carrot for this global conglomerate hanging there. How are we going to tackle doing this with people from all over the world with different cultures,
Right.
different way of speaking, brands that are not ready to do this because they built their own site? Why would they want to remove that and have some dude from Paris rebuild it for you? You know what I mean? It's
Right.
horrible. And so we had to do a lot of human stuff before. Like,
There's
I
so
think it
much of that.
before we go to the first line. Right?
Totally.
So,
There's so
yeah,
much of that sort of human relationship conflict management that
exactly.
comes into making changes and transitioning into, even like a new tech situation, or asking people to potentially give up something, right? Like if you have already built your own digital experience, it may be cumbersome and hard to use, but it's still a thing that you built. And
And
so
what's
that comes with some fear and anxiety, right? So you have to manage
100%.
those things.
And in our case, what was like, I've done a few of those like multi-tenants, like huge programs for also other brands I cannot name. L'Oreal's the one that we can talk about, but they were doing these things where, okay, this company has to make money. Let's make an internal organ that's going to facilitate this multi-tenancy transformation that we're doing. But they need to make money, because if a certain part of this organization doesn't make money, it has to die. That's just how these brands work. They're huge. So the brands that they forced to make a new site inside the new multi-tenant system had to pay this internal organ, this team that was doing it. But they charged them a shit ton. Like, and so they first of all had their own site. They were managing it. They were maybe not that happy, but it was theirs. And then there was this central organ inside the same company that said, no, you're going to have to do this thing, but you're going to have to pay me, like, I don't know, I'm not going to name numbers, but high. But then we, as the agency building these sites, we didn't get that money. So it was like internal movement of like all the funds on top of them not wanting it. And then we also had these people that were, how do you say, like doing the maintenance and the DevOps of a ton of those projects, and they kind of helped out everywhere. They were completely out of the game now, but they still had to do the approvals of going live. But they had to then deal with something like, okay, I just built this thing, I helped them out, I'm running it as a DevOps engineer, it's awesome. So this group of folks from Paris built this site and I have to approve it. I don't like it. And they were just sandbagging us.
And these are all the things that you need to think about, right? Because you need to first understand how your system works, or how your series of systems or network of systems work, and understand how the people are working within them, and then figure out a way in sort of that speaks to them, right? Use their own language. Don't talk about why it benefits you in your position, but how it's going to benefit them specifically. And then the overall group, and move there. And don't try to do it all at once.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, look at L'Oreal.com, which is like their brand website of all their brands. And all these brands have these new websites, and it's major success. So it can be done. It's just, I'm bald for a reason, you know? You go with it. Anyways, we're going over time because we're having a lot of fun. This is it to be a DevRel at Hygraph. Right? Put Romina and Brian, our colleagues, on here, and these are our meetings. Right? This is a good time. And luckily we can actually promote where we work, because we love using this product. And anyways, we could talk for hours, but then I need to drink, because it's end of the week here, Friday, 5 p.m. So, but you have a whole day to go, right?
I do. It's almost lunchtime though here.
Right. Mr. Sharp, I know you're asking some question to Brian. He just moved into a meeting. So we're looking at Hygraph and Shopify. So on the top of your head, Lo, do you know if we have any content currently with Shopify? I know our customer engineers and solution engineers have some stuff with Shopify.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but we can definitely find out, because I know that
I think it does
exist.
Yeah, we like Shopify is a really great API to use. They have GraphQL, they have REST. So it's relatively easy for us to integrate it into Hygraph if we want to. So you can just query Hygraph and get Shopify data with federation.
Yeah.
Or we do like, oh yeah, here, look, Nikki says we actually do have demos.
Excellent.
So, Mr. Sharp, if you're still here, we will set up a stream for you where we will do this. And if you are interested, you might join us on that stream and tell us this is my use case, and we might just code it together.
Yeah,
Like
that
it's
would
all
be
just
so
easy
fun.
vibes. Let's try, and why not? So,
Yeah, let's do
Mr.
it.
Sharp, feel free to join us in Slack so we can just chat and reach out to each other and make that happen. All right.
Awesome.
I've said Slack many times now. I think.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Lo, and the investment in figuring all this stuff out and your presentation. And I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone. That was so fun. I look forward to doing it again. Have a good
We will.
weekend, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.